Welcome everyone. Today we are embarking on a journey through one of the most remarkable economic transformations in human history, the industrial evolution of South Korea. In just 7 decades, this nation transformed from a war-torn agrarian society into a global leader in high-tech manufacturing. This story is not just about numbers. It is about a strategic shift in how a nation produces value and competes on the global stage. To understand where we are going, we must first understand the path we have traveled. We will explore how the focus shifted from simple survival to global dominance, and finally, to the complex structural challenges we face in the 21st century. By the end of this session, you will have a clear view of the K industrial DNA. As shown in this index, our presentation is divided into 4 critical parts. First, we will cover the historical evolution from the 1950s to the 1980s. Second, we will discuss the rise of the IT sector and the unique phenomenon of jobless growth that defines our modern era. Third, we will dive deep into the structural issues, including the widening gap between industries and the limits of our current production model. Finally, we will conclude with a forward-looking perspective on 2026 and the necessary policy shifts to ensure sustainable growth. Each of these stages represents a fundamental shift in South Korea's economic identity. We will see how the nation moved from being a fast follower to a first mover. Moving forward, let's go back to where it all began, the era of post-war recovery. The 1950s was a period of survival. Emerging from the ruins of the Korean War, the economy was almost entirely agricultural and reliant on foreign aid. During this time, the 3 white industries, flour, sugar, and cotton textiles, formed the backbone of the economy, providing essential goods to a struggling population. However, the 1960s brought a radical change. The government implemented an export-led strategy, leveraging Korea's only abundant resource at the time, a hard-working, low-wage labor force. We moved from importing basic goods to manufacturing items like wigs, footwear, and textiles for the global market. By the end of the 1960s, manufacturing's share of the economy rose to 18.5%, while agriculture began its long-term decline. This was the element-driven stage, where we learned how to build and operate factories efficiently. It was the first step in our journey to becoming a global workshop. But simple light industry wasn't enough to sustain growth. This leads us to the bold transition of the 70s and 80s. In 1973, a pivotal decision was made to promote the heavy and chemical industries, or HCI. The government targeted 6 core sectors: steel, non-ferrous metals, shipbuilding, electronics, chemicals, and machinery. This wasn't just a policy, it was a national mission. This era was investment-led, characterized by massive capital injections and the rise of large conglomerates known as chaebols. By the late 1970s, HCI output had already surpassed light industry. South Korea was no longer just sewing shirts, it was building massive ships and producing high-grade steel. By the 1980s, the value-added share of HCI exceeded 50% of all manufacturing. This period established the diverse industrial base we see today. However, the focus remained on large-scale assembly and production processes. We were excellent at doing, but we were still importing the thinking, the core designs and technologies. This brings us to our next chapter, where the focus shifted from heavy hardware to digital intelligence. As we entered the 1990s, the low-wage advantage disappeared as countries like China entered the global market. South Korea faced a choice: innovate or stagnate. The response was a shift toward technology-led growth. This era saw the meteoric rise of the IT sector, especially after the 1997 financial crisis, which acted as a catalyst for restructuring the economy. Private firms took the lead, investing heavily in R&D to develop world-class memory chips and telecommunication devices. We moved beyond simple assembly to sophisticated product development. However, a hidden structural weakness persisted. We still relied heavily on Japan and other advanced nations for core parts and materials. Even so, the 2000s cemented South Korea's reputation as a global IT powerhouse. This technological momentum has carried us into the current era, where the boundaries of industry are being redefined. Today, we are in the midst of the 4th industrial revolution. The government and private sector are focusing on the 5 major new industries: AI, biohealth, secondary batteries for EVs, future mobility, and high-value entertainment content. We are transitioning from being a fast follower to a first mover. This era is defined by smartification and convergence. It's no longer just about making a car. It's about the software and the battery inside it. The global dominance of Korean firms in the electric vehicle supply chain and the pharmaceutical sector shows that our industrial structure is becoming increasingly high-value and integrated. We are moving toward an economy where data is as valuable as steel once was. However, this rapid technological advancement has created a strange paradox in our labor market, which we will examine next. A unique feature of the Korean economy is what we call the deindustrialization of employment. Since 1989, the share of workers in manufacturing has been declining. Yet, interestingly, manufacturing's share of our GDP remains one of the highest in the world. How is this possible? The answer is jobless growth. Our manufacturing sector has become highly automated and capital-intensive. We produce more than ever, but with fewer people. This has pushed the workforce into the service sector, which now accounts for 65% of all employees. While this is a natural progression in advanced economies, in Korea, the transition has been exceptionally fast, leaving many workers in low-productivity service roles. To understand the implications of this shift, we need to look at the widening gap between our different economic sectors. The rapid evolution of our industries has left behind a legacy of economic bipolarization. Since the 1990s, a massive gap has opened between high-productivity sectors, like semiconductors and automobiles led by large firms, and low-productivity sectors, mostly comprised of SMEs and traditional services. Large corporations innovate and compete globally, but they generate fewer jobs. Meanwhile, SMEs in the service sector absorb the majority of the workforce, but suffer from stagnant productivity. This creates a dual labor market, high-paying jobs in tech and manufacturing versus lower-paying, less stable jobs in services. This imbalance is one of the most critical challenges for South Korea's social and economic stability. Now let's take a closer look at the revolving door that many of these service workers find themselves in. The Korean service industry is often described as a, quote, revolving door. Because it is easy to start small businesses like restaurants or retail shops, we see a massive concentration of self-employed individuals in these low-entry barrier sectors. Unfortunately, these businesses often face fierce competition and low profit margins, leading to a cycle of frequent openings and closures. Currently, service sector productivity is only about 40% of that in manufacturing, one of the lowest levels in the OECD. For too long, services were seen merely as a support system for manufacturing exports, rather than a source of growth in themselves. To break this cycle, we must shift from survival-type services to knowledge-based services, like finance, IT consulting, and high-end biotechnology. But the service sector isn't our only challenge. Even our star manufacturing industries face a structural ceiling. Despite our global standing, South Korea's industrial structure suffers from a reliance on the assembly stage of the global value chain. We are world-class at assembly and production, but we lag behind in the high-value stages, product planning, core design, and software. This leads to a hollow-out effect. When we export a smartphone or an electric vehicle, a large portion of the profit goes back to the countries that provided the core components and software. Our dependence on imported intermediate goods means that even when exports increase, the domestic production induction effect, the benefit to our own economy and jobs, is weakening. We are essentially trapped in the middle of the value chain. If we don't address these issues, we risk falling into what experts call the deindustrialization trap. The deindustrialization trap occurs when a nation loses its competitiveness in low-skilled manufacturing due to rising wages and competition from countries like China, but fails to sufficiently develop high-value service sectors to absorb the displaced workforce. South Korea is at this crossroads right now. We have a fragile economy that is highly reliant on a few export products and rising debt. If we cannot improve the quality of employment in the service sector and strengthen our domestic supply chain for core materials, our growth potential will continue to decline. The miracle on the Han River needs a new engine to keep moving forward. Now let's look at the bright spots and the strategic moves we need to make as we head toward 2026. Looking ahead to 2026, the outlook for South Korea's core industries remains cautiously optimistic. The semiconductor industry is expected to see a strong recovery, driven by the AI revolution. Additionally, K-beauty and cosmetics are showing remarkable growth in global markets, proving that Korea can succeed in consumer-facing sectors as well. We also expect significant growth in the biohealth and entertainment industries. These are knowledge-based sectors that rely on human capital rather than just physical factories. The integration of digital platforms with traditional cultural content is creating new forms of high-value exports. However, these successes must be spread across the entire economy to be truly sustainable. To escape the structural traps we've discussed, we must implement 3 key policy shifts. First, we need to foster our own core materials and parts industry to reduce dependence on imports. This means nurturing high-tech SMEs that can provide the brains of our products. Second, we must sophisticate the service sector. We need to encourage investment in high-value services like AI consulting and biotechnology, rather than just more fried chicken shops. Third, we need labor market reforms that help small-scale self-employed individuals transition into high-quality wage employment. By integrating digital technologies across all industries, we can bridge the productivity gap between manufacturing and services. This is the path toward a more balanced and resilient Korean economy. In conclusion, South Korea's industrial journey is a testament to human ingenuity and government-led strategic planning. We have evolved from a survival-based economy to a global tech leader. However, the HCI-era playbook is no longer enough. The challenges of bipolarization, low service productivity, and GVC dependence are real and pressing. But just as we overcame the ruins of war and the 1997 crisis, we have the potential to reinvent ourselves once more. By focusing on high-value technology, sophisticated services, and a more equitable labor market, we can turn the deindustrialization trap into a structural leap. Thank you for your attention. I hope this presentation has provided you with a deeper understanding of the past, present, and future of South Korea's industrial heart.